Hello, we are back with some more games. This is Tam Tam, and I am here with Kamikaza, who has, I think, a new friend on his shoulder.
Yes, I'm joined by Kyoga today because we bring some Series 13 action to you, and I expect Kyoga to appear at least once.
Yes, so full disclosure, actually, two full disclosures. I'm a little sick, so if you notice something off, my apologies. And also, I am, like, I assume a lot of people not very familiar with Series 13. It's sort of a technically official, but not quite official format, so I must admit, I haven't played it, but I am excited to see what this full of restricted format is gonna look like. Okay, and we will be casting a match between the Celtics of Torkoal. I suppose I will call them the Torkoals for short, and the Howley Heat. We are casting the game between Karen, also known as AuraRayquaza, and Henry, also known as Hobbit. And what do you think about the state of things right now, Maurice? Do you have
Yeah, I
anything to
mean,
add?
there are still a lot of games open, but Holy Heat already leading the week with 3-1. So if Celtics, no, if the Torcos still want to win the week, they have to win every game. So this match definitely matters, even so early in the week, if you would say it like that.
Yes, Taran is their lifeline here, whereas if Henry wins, that means that at worst the Holy Heat are gonna tie this week.
Yes, and I can tell from personal experience that if you are ahead 4-1, then it's looking pretty likely that you win the week because of the momentum you have, of the confidence your team has, and yeah, they can play a lot more risky, and yeah, they can just play with more confidence because it doesn't really feel that pressured.
Yes, I agree. The mental aspect of these team tours is a really big part.
Yes,
But
definitely.
let's take a look at these players' teams, though. So we have Terran versus Hobbit, as mentioned previously. These are both ex-Blizzards, which I think is a fun little tidbit because we are also Blizzards affiliated, so full-on Blizzards game happening here.
Yes, definitely. And Terran, I think everybody watching this stream knows him. For the people who don't, he went to a lot of tournaments this year, and he did so well. He went top 8 at NAAC, got the top cut there, barely missed it in Frankfurt and at the EUIC with top 16 there. He's currently undefeated, or he was undefeated in the Smorgon PL with the Stoutlands, and yeah, so you can definitely see that he's a top player, both in those team tournaments where he always does well, as well as in the offline events, basically.
Yes, exactly. He's been popping off in offline events during the pandemic, pretty much. Uh, so on the other side, we have Henry, also known as Hobbit. He's an Australian player, and as you can see in the little list of results, he is the Brisbane regional champion for this year. But if we go back a bit and look at his previous results, then we will also see that he's gotten second at a bunch of regionals. He's top cut a bunch of regionals in the Australian circuit. He's just been doing consistently well for a pretty long time. And in general, I would say that Henry's the sort of player who he likes to make his own teams. He likes to experiment a bit. He likes to find like niche picks and figure out something fun to do with them. So I'm excited to see if that is also the case with his Series 13 team here.
Yeah, I mean, it does look pretty interesting, right? With the Zera Ora there, with the Venusaur, that's not your typical restricted. and and then maybe some sort of Trick Room core going on there, while Terran opts for a more classic team, I would say. I mean, Samazenta is kind of underused, but we've seen it to being used to great success in the past weeks. Same goes for Zekrom, a pretty strong Dynamaxer, and I already said this like a few weeks ago, but I think the cool thing about CS13 is that we can see all those restricted Pokemon that we don't normally see because Zacian, Kyogre, or Groudon just overshadow the strength of those Pokemon. But yeah, in Series 13, obviously there are no restrictions to the number of Pokemon that are being used. And yeah, I'm excited to see what the lead's gonna be.
Yes, looks like we're jumping straight into it. So let's see what they end up leading with. This is from Terran's pod. So, okay, looks like Henry's gonna send out Zacian and Zerora. Whereas Terran, oh, that is a shiny Zerora even. Terran is responding with Zacian and Zamazenta on his side of the field. And I will quickly mention that Zerora does have that rather unique Plasma Fist move that allows it to change moves to normal type, which will then be absorbed by its Volt Absorb. So not terribly relevant against these two Pokemon, but could be relevant against something else, possibly. Who knows?
Yeah, this was the first thing I was thinking about, but I don't really see a great normal type user, normal type attack user between those 12 Pokemon. So I don't know if we will see this interaction, but on the other hand, Zeraora is a really fast Pokemon. It hits kind of hard, and I mean it's a fake out user as well. So yeah, we will see, and I think Zamazenta offers a lot of good support here. It depends whether Zamazenta is faster than the Zacian, I believe, which we will see right now.
Yes, so we did see that Zerora go for a fake out, while the Zamazenta goes for a coaching. And as Terran was selecting his moves, we saw that this was an extremely supportive Zamazenta with coaching, and I believe we even saw Scary Face, which is a normal type move, so there is potential for blocking that with those Plasma Fists, I guess, later down the line.
I mean, that would be funny. But the sub going on from Hobbit puts him in a really nice position here, I would say. I mean, he still has to break the Zacian that's sitting at +1 defense, but for now, the Zacian can do whatever it wants, basically, without fearing a knockout.
Yes, I agree. And actually, we're gonna see that Zacian on Hobbit's side go for Protect, perhaps expecting that Terran will try to double it to break that sub. But instead, it looks like a Behemoth Bash, this would be, from the Zamazenta, is gonna go into the Zerora here, which takes it like a champ. And interested to see what the Zacian goes for. That is a
called
play rough.
The Protect, I mean.
Yeah, he did call the Protect. Perhaps a little telegraphed, like when a Protect goes up on one side, the other player always wants to, break it. So Terran basically saw right through that and simply doubled up into the other slot. And we see Henry sending out his Calyrex here, which is an interesting choice.
Yeah, it's interesting that he brought Calyrex when your opponent has Zacian and Zamazenta. I think both are matching up pretty well into the Calyrex. And I mean, the Zacian, if you remember, still sits at +1, so the Calyrex is not going to appreciate the Behemoth Blade coming in. Probably going for Protect, but yeah, I mean, the Zacian is still sitting pretty safely because of the opponent, because of the coaching boost, right?
Yes, so indeed, as you said, there was a Protect from the Calyrex. That one I would say was also quite telegraphed, but this time Terran simply attacks into it with both of his Pokemon. And meanwhile, Henry's Zacian, still behind that sub, gets a big hit up into Terran's Zacian, which is now under 50%.
It's actually a ton of damage. I didn't think it would do that much, and yeah, now it kind of comes down to like calling Protects, because like Hobbit's Zacian can protect now, and then obviously it would block the damage. It would still have this sub intact. Calyrex could switch out, which we do see here, and yeah, we will see what Terran's gonna do now.
Yeah, looks like Henry went into Groudon, which I believe it should be able to tank the attacks from the Zacian and Zamazenta better, given it's not actually weak to Steel. Looks like a Behemoth Bash going into that slot. Oh no, going into the Zacian slot, and that should be enough to break the sub. We'll see that in a second. It did indeed fade. So now it will be interesting to see. I believe that is the Zacian on Henry's side going before. No, that was actually Terrance. Doing a big chunk of damage to the Groudon. And now Henry's Zacian is the slower one. My apologies. And this will be taking out Terran's Zacian finally. So that goes down. And that's a pretty big knockout for Henry. We do see a crit, but given the damage last turn, we know that didn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting because for the future games, Terran now knows the speed interactions, so the sub isn't that scary anymore because like the Zamazenta breaks the sub and then his own Zacian can go before the other Zacian and probably kill it from 75%. So this will be interesting knowledge for the future games, but right now, it looks like he might struggle in the later stages of the game against this Calyrex Ice because Zacian, his only way of beating it properly with Behemoth Blade or of countering it is gone.
Yes. And now we see Terran go into his Incineroar, which I have to mention, it's a Pokemon that Terran has hated on for such a long time, so seeing him finally use it is kind of amusing. And it's an Air Balloon Incineroar as well, which is a tech I believe we saw at Worlds even. And even more interesting, it looks like he's going for the Incineroar Dynamax, potentially. Or is he changing his mind? No, that is going to be an Incineroar Dynamax. Going to go for a Max Flare into the Zacian, it looks like. Curious to see how that works out for him.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember that only Calyrex Ice in the back now, Incineroar looks really great. So why not just Dynamax it, double its HP, so it hangs on 1 or 2 more turns, right? And yeah, I think Incineroar Dynamax makes a lot of sense here. He has to be careful because we did see him have the Kyogre in the back. But for now, I think it's a pretty good idea to just go on the offensive here, try to carry the momentum, because the Groudon is probably not gonna survive the Behemoth Bash. So Zacian either has to go for a sub to survive or protect, both of which would benefit Terran here.
Yes, I have to agree with you. The Incineroar Max makes quite a lot of sense if you think about it for a moment. So as you mentioned, Zamazenta going for another bash. Will this one be into the Groudon slot? It looks like it is. And that does take it out. So goodbye to the Groudon. That Incineroar's Air Balloon might not even come to use here. Meanwhile, the Zacian will be going for a sub, as you also suggested, which will allow it to live this Max Flare coming from the Incineroar here. And now I'm curious to see how Hobbit chooses to adjust here, because he could go into the Calyrex, right? But then that Incineroar in Sun is looking a little bit scary.
Yeah, I mean, Hobbit still has his Dynamax, so maybe he for sure will Dynamax the Calyrex Ice, but I don't think I don't know if it will survive the Behemoth Bash plus the Flare Blitz. The Behemoth Bash obviously having the same side effect as the Behemoth Blade, dealing double damage to Dynamax Pokemon. So I don't quite think it will survive a double up, because Hobbit quite unluckily set up the Sun for Incineroar as well.
Yes, he might not have expected to see that Dynamax Incineroar here, but it looks like, again, as you said, he's responding with a Dynamax of his own, Dynamaxing that Calyrex, and maybe he will just go for a Max Guard to prevent any damage from those opposing Pokemon, because just like you, I'm not so sure Calyrex lives a double up here, but no, it's not a Max Guard. We actually see that it has the Babiri Berry, lowering the damage from this Behemoth Bash. So this is basically neutering that Dynamax bonus the move normally gets. Still does a decent amount of damage, but this might be enough to allow it to survive an attack from the Incineroar at least. Flare Orb coming out from Zacian, but oh, that's an avoid. Ooh, this could be really bad if Henry decided to also Quake the Incineroar slot, hoping that he would have broken that Air Balloon. Okay, that looks like a Max Quake, but it's not into the Incineroar because we see the animation go off, so it's into the Zamazenta, which honestly tanks it quite well.
Yeah, and this is another really good information for Terran. We finally saw the last move on the Zacian being the Play Rough. And if you now look at Hobbit's team and think about how could he break the Zamazenta and even the Incineroar, it looks kinda grim because he basically only has the Groudon that is able to hit it for super effective, because obviously Sacred Sword is not an option because it doesn't carry it on his Zacian, so it's really tough for him to break the Zamazenta, and he has to break it, otherwise it would just coach left and right and deal a lot of damage with the Behemoth Bashes as well.
Yes, I agree. That Zamazenta is proving to be like a surprisingly big thorn in Henry's side here. Play rough though, finally hitting that Incineroar, popping that air balloon. Meanwhile, the Max Fire comes out, and this is surely going to be an easy knockout for Terran. Yep, looks like it is. So, do you have any particular thoughts going into game 2 here?
Yeah, I mean, it was really well played by both players, I think. Both respecting the opponent, respecting the opponent's protects, playing around it pretty well, but Terran really seems to have the matchup advantage here, so Hobbit kind of needs to come up with a solution against the Summer Center, especially because his Summer Center and Zacian, Terran's Summer Center and Zacian both seem to be faster than the whole team of Hobbit, right?
Yeah, I also find it interesting that he has a Calyrex on his team at all, because like it doesn't really seem to be a Trick Roomy kind of team. It doesn't seem like it has, if the Calyrex has Trick Room, it doesn't seem like it has the support to allow it to set up Trick Room. So maybe benching the Calyrex is a better call.
Yeah, I don't think Calyrex should come again, but maybe Henry has other plans, and we will see in game 2, right? So let's just jump into it.
Yes, excited to see how these two players will adjust. I could see Terran sticking with the same lead, but maybe Henry will change things up a bit. We will see in a moment.
Yeah, same leads would make sense for Terran because I didn't really see anything that Henry could do, but maybe the Venusaur is the solution here.
Yeah, Venusaur is a good adjustment, but actually both players adjusting here. So we see Zeraora and Venusaur on Henry's side, while Terran is choosing to bring Incineroar and Zekrom this time. So Zekrom is an interesting one that we didn't see very much in Series 12. It was a rather niche pick. And similarly, the Venusaur adjustment on Henry's side is also rather fascinating because now he's threatening that potential Switch Sleep Powder combo. And looks like this as a dual wing beat outrage. Zekrom seems to be geared toward offensively Dynamaxing here.
Oh my god, does it kill? It just kills. Oh my god.
Wow. Okay, I think Henry didn't see that coming, and given he so confidently just stayed in with the Venusaur, it was probably Sash. But
yeah,
that dual wing beat catching him off guard.
Yeah, it was most likely Sash, and he just tried to get momentum with the sleep powder, but the dual wing beat, instead of the bounce that Zekrom normally plays, or I mean, could play otherwise, came really clutch here because it barely knocked out the Venusaur. So yeah, from this position it looks really rough. Obviously Zekrom Groudon pairs really well into those two Pokemon, but I think Terran still has some tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, and just like you said, Terran hasn't shown off everything he has yet, and this is quite commanding for him. He even managed to, not Dynamax his Zekrom turn 1, knowing that, with the dual wing beat I can break through that Sash on the Venu if it's got that. And also being quite confident that the Zeraora was gonna stay in because of the fake out pressure from Incineroar. So here we see Incineroar go back into a Kyogre, removing the Sun for the Groudon, which not entirely sure it matters at this point, but regardless, doesn't hurt. And finally the Zekrom is Dynamaxing. It's very much got a moveset that suggests that you want to be Dynamaxing it with moves like Outrage, which otherwise you can't really control properly. So let's see what it goes for. I believe we saw it earlier, but it is going to be...
No max.
It's actually going to be a taunt from the Zeraora onto the Kyogre slot, which doesn't really do much since we saw it was an Assault Vest set. It's going to be a Wormwind here, yeah. Which is lowering that attack on the Groudon, and yeah, this still looks good for Terran, don't you think?
Yeah, it's interesting that the Groudon did not go for a Dynamax. It even misses the Zekrom here, which is crucial, but I think Henry probably suggests that Henry has something in the back that he wants to max, so maybe no Zacian there, or he wanted to stall as well. But yeah, now obviously it looks really great because Kyogre can just fire off a big attack. He has the best Kyogre set in the world with the Assault Vest. And yeah, I mean, it's looking really tough from Henry here.
No bias there.
No
But
bias towards the Kyogre, absolutely not, no.
that miss from the Precipice Blades definitely hurts for Henry. Although, well, the Zekrom was gonna live it regardless, so we know that at least. Here comes some Plasma Fists from Henry's Zeraora, gonna deal a chunk to the Kyogre, but thanks to that Wormwind attack drop, it's gonna live that. And meanwhile, Zekrom gets to get off an Airstream, ensuring that this Kyogre is gonna outspeed potentially the Zacian. It's gonna depend on their speed stats.
We do see a Origin Pulse, but unfortunately or fortunately for Henry, it misses, so kinda evens out the Precipice Blades miss earlier, and this miss actually is pretty important to keep Henry in the game, I think, because now it's obviously the water attacks are weakened due to the sun, so you kinda don't want to stay in with the Kyogre here. It's still looking tough because you can still get one more outrage off. You still have your Incineroar in the back to lower the attack. So yeah, I don't know if he can break through it. Groudon matches up pretty well against Incineroar and Zekrom. Not so well against Kyogre, but that one is low at least. So yeah, maybe he still has a chance to come back with his Dynamax. What do you think?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think it looks very commanding for Terran here. But regardless, we see the Kyogre switching out back into that Incineroar, shuffling that Intimidate, and I think it's interesting how Henry's team seems to be quite physically oriented overall, and that makes him rather weak to all these Intimidates. And honestly, it almost makes me wonder if Henry got the information that Terran tends to not like using Incineroar and therefore was like feeling pretty safe, comfortable going in with a team like this, only to end up facing off against it regardless. But we see a Dynamax from the Groudon, so all in now.
That's honestly a good observation by you, I think, because that's something that goes into those team leagues as well, right? If you know the player you're facing up against, or you're facing, then you can adjust your team to some degree because you don't expect maybe Hard Trick Room going off, or yeah, and Incineroar as well. So yeah, but this time he used Incineroar to great success, and it looks like it may even be able to win him the game here.
Yeah, so Henry kind of hanging on for dear life. He's gonna go with a Quake, but at -2 after that Intimidate and after that Wormwind. It's not doing a ton to this Incineroar. He does get the sub up with the Zacian though, so that could be annoying for Terran. And now Terran's own Dynamax is over, so perhaps Henry will be able to turn things around one way or another.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, Zekrom outside of Dynamax looks like it's not really a Pokemon, one might say. Because it carries it basically an only click Bolt Strike now to hit the Zacian, but it gets outsped by the Zacian anyway, so
Indeed. We see the Protect and Incineroar. We saw it earlier when Terran was selecting his moves, but very much worth noting because Protect is not the most common move on Incineroar. It tends to want to use all 4 of its slots. It tends to want Stabs, it tends to want Fake Out, and then it tends to want to have Parting Shot. So curious to see if Henry reads into that somehow. It looks like he doesn't need to, because that play rough simply KOs the Zekrom, and now whatever move the Groudon goes for is going to be redirected into this protecting Incineroar regardless. So
will it be able to KO it though? No, not really.
No, not even close, thanks to that Protect. Maybe with a crit.
Okay, so he dual ring beated the Groudon here, and this might be enough now for the Zacian to pick off the KO. We will see in a moment probably, because I mean Groudon carried this item through Series 12, being the Assault Vest, and decides to carry it rather often in Series 13 as well. So yeah, maybe the dual ring beat was the little bit of damage he needed, because Behemoth Blade to most of Groudon's does like a little bit more than 50%. But let's see if it is able to KO.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see if this seals the deal or if it's gonna hang on. No, that's enough to get the KO. And now Hobbit is down to just 1 Pokemon. It may be behind a sub, but still it is just 1 Zacian against Well, actually, I think Terran still has 3 months left, which is now going to be 2. So it's looking rather tough for Henry here.
Yeah, especially given that the Zacian is at -1 because it got intimidated and it got the drop from Max Dragons. So yeah, I think he needs a few. I mean, he probably needs only 1 crit on the opposing Zacian, right? That will maybe be enough.
It might be. It might be.
Yeah.
Terran choosing to go for a rather safe Thunder into Henry's Zacian, which... Okay, looks like Terran's Zacian's moving first. We knew it was faster from game 1. That will be breaking the sub. But the Zacian should be able to tank this Thunder rather easily. So let's see what happens here. Presumably, Henry KOs the Kyogre here. Yes, looks like he targets the Kyogre. Thunder doesn't even get to go off. And now we have this Zacian versus Zacian stare down.
Yeah, we know Terran Zacian is faster. We know Terran Zacian is not at -2, so... probably not even a crit would save Hobbit here, because if you think about it, a crit at neutral does the same as a normal Behemoth Blade, basically, from a not intimidated +1 Zacian, and that's most of the time not able to KO the other Zacian. But we don't even get to see it because Terran just has a strong Zacian and kills the Henry Zacian from 75%. So GG's to both players. I think it was a really tough matchup, and as you suggested, the Incineroar was probably not expected by Henry, which helped Terran secure the win.
Yes, that was a pretty demanding victory from Terran, but I do agree that the matchup looked rather rough for Henry, so understandable that it ended up being a bit of a struggle. And with this, the Torkoals are hanging on. They still have, the chance to win this week.
Yeah, go Torkoals. I think in game 2 it was a really great adaptation from Terran with the dual ring beat on the Venusaur. Probably expecting even the Venusaur to come out there. Or the Max Dragon. I mean, Max Dragon is really strong against the opposing team as well. So yeah, I really liked the lead adaptation there, even though his game 1 lead looked so demanding as well.
Yes, I have to agree. And then so I also wanted to mention real quick that on the other side, the Venusaur adaptation from Henry, also quite good, I think. Even if Terran potentially saw through that, I think it makes sense to go with Venu in that game too, because he did have at least a decent shot of catching Terran off guard there. So even if it didn't quite work out, I completely respect the train of thought that happened there.
Yeah, definitely. So with this top match, I think we conclude the week, right? And Evan and Izzy will do a little recap and hype you up for the next week in just a moment.
Yeah,
Thank you for casting with me.
Thank you for watching.